What's up, my people? It's Kiwanis, your credit and tax advisor. Today, we are talking all about fantasy sports and taxes. If you are a fan of fantasy sports and you use apps like FanDuel and DraftKings, you probably know that it can be a lot of fun and a great way to connect with other fans. But did you know there are also some tax considerations that you should be aware of? In this video, we're going to go over some of the important points to keep in mind when it comes to taxes and fantasy sports. First of all, it's important to note the IRS considers fantasy sports to be a form of gambling, and as such, any winnings that you earn are considered taxable income. This means that you will need to report your fantasy sports winnings on your tax returns. If it turns out to be your lucky day and you win a net profit of $600 or more for the year, the organizers have a legal obligation to send both you and the IRS Form 1099 MISC. Now, if you receive your winnings through PayPal, then that may be Form 1099K. Before I move on to my next point, I want to remind you that now is the perfect time to start preparing to file your taxes. If you need a tax preparation checklist, I have listed one in the description box for you. So let's move on. It's also important to keep track of your fantasy sports expenses. These can include things like entry fees or subscription fees, or if there are any software fees that you may have. While you may not be able to deduct these expenses in full, you may be able to claim a deduction for a portion of these expenses that's related to the fantasy sport activity. Another important point is that if you have significant fantasy sports winnings, you may be required to make an estimated tax payment throughout the year. This is because the IRS requires taxpayers to pay their taxes as they earn or receive the income rather than all at once when they file their return. If you don't make that estimated tax payment as required, you may be subject to an underpayment penalty. Now, finally, it's worth mentioning that if you are a professional fantasy sports player, you may be able to claim your winnings as self-employment income. Now, that means that you will be subject to the self-employment tax, but it may also allow you to claim certain business-related expenses as deductions. So if you're into fantasy sports, be sure to keep these tax considerations in mind. And as always, it's a good idea to consult with a tax professional or refer to the IRS guidelines for more information or if you have questions. I hope that you have found this video valuable. Make sure that you hit that like button. If you have any questions, make sure that you leave those in the comments. Until next week, be safe.